Hey all, in this video we'll talk more on derived attributes. Now we have learned about derived attributes when we had learned ER diagrams. So what is a derived attribute? Any attribute that can be calculated or derived or found based on other attributes in the ER diagram is called as a derived attribute. For example, I can find the age of an employee if I know his date of birth and the current date. I just subtract the current date from the date of birth and I get the age of the employee. So age can become my derived attribute. As you all are well aware, we denote a derived attribute in terms of dashed line ellipse like this over here. Let us take an example. I have a table over here, employee info. I have 4 attributes: employee ID, employee name, date of birth. These 3 attributes are simple attributes and age over here is my derived attribute. That means I am deriving my age by means of the date of birth given and the current date. So I find the age to be 15 and 40 depending on the date of birth given over here. So how do we formulate a derived attribute? There are 3 methods mainly. The first method is by using a create table syntax and a SQL function. Let us write the syntax of creating table for this employee info table. So I will say create table employee info. Employee ID, employee name, date of birth and age are my attributes. Employee ID is the primary key, small int. Employee name is varchar. Date of birth is date and age is small int. Now, if I want to define my derived attribute inside my create table syntax itself, I should write my derived attribute, that is age, as age, then the data type as timestamp difference. Okay. So this timestamp difference is a SQL time function. This SQL time function called as timestamp difference finds the difference between 2 attributes, 2 time attributes. In this case, the 2 attributes are date of birth and current date. This current date is again an SQL time function. So what timestamp difference does is that it finds the time difference between the current date and the date of birth, and it returns that value in terms of either year or months or days or hours or seconds. So if you want to find the difference between current date and date of birth in terms of days, instead of year you will write days. Now if you want to find the difference between the current date and date of birth in terms of months, instead of year you will write months. In our case, we want to find the age in terms of year. So we are saying timestamp difference, year, date of birth and current date. So these 3 are the attributes of this SQL function timestamp difference. We will learn more on this SQL functions in the further videos. Let us try this out in our MariaDB shell. So I will just copy the syntax. So I have started the MariaDB shell. I will just create a database, maybe create database test underscore Jithin. I will use a database, use test underscore Jithin. Let me copy the create table syntax. Okay, so my table is created. Let me describe employee underscore info. I have employee ID, employee name, date of birth and age as my attributes. Age over here is a derived attribute. So under extra you will find virtual generated, means your age will be generated depending on the date of birth and the current date. Let us try this out by putting some values.
How do I enter values? I will say insert into employee info. Attributes are employee ID, employee name and date of birth. I will say values. Employee ID is 101. Employee name is Forest. 2004, 10, 82, 02, Gump, maybe 1980.
So I have inserted 2 rows. Now I have not put the age over here. Let us see if the age is automatically generated. So I will do select star from employee info. So in this way, I can see that age has been derived automatically from the date of birth and the current date. Fine. So this is the date of birth given to me over here. This is the age 15 and 40. So this over here is one method to find your derived attribute. The next method is just by using SQL functions. Now you will see that in the earlier method, we are storing the data inside the table itself. So 15 and 40 are stored within the table itself. But if you do not want to store this data inside the table and you want to only view the data, you can just do a select all of this from the employee info table and you can just view the data. So there is no question of the data getting stored. Okay, so let us try this out and see. I will do a paste. So what I am saying over here, I am saying select employee ID, that is this, employee name, date of birth, and then I am doing the next variable to be timestamp difference, year, date of birth and current date as age derived. Okay, so this entire function I am calling it as age derived, and therefore I get the same answer. Okay, the difference between this and the first method is that in the earlier method we are storing the value of age in the table. In this method we are only viewing the data by means of the select command. The third method is to use triggers, and we will see triggers in the next video. Let us now talk of one more example, please. Suppose I have a sales table with me. Sales table has customer ID, product ID, quantity bought, cost per unit and total cost. Now all these four things are simple attributes, and this total cost is a derived attribute. How do I find the total cost of a product? I will say quantity bought 2 into cost per unit, that is 50. So it is 2 into 50, that is 100. So as you can see, 100 over here. And 8 into 40 is 320 over here. So this total cost is my derived attribute. Now how do I formulate this derived attribute? Again, there are three methods. First is by using the create table syntax. Second is by using the SQL function. And third is by using triggers. Let us start off with the first method. So in the first method, I am going to create the table called as sales. I have customer ID, product ID, quantity bought and cost per unit. These four are my simple attributes, and total cost becomes my derived attribute. So same way I am saying total cost is integer, and I am saying total cost integer as quantity bought multiplied by cost per unit, that will be equal to total cost. So I will do a copy over here. I'll open this up, I'll do a paste. I have a create table syntax and my table is created. Let me just describe this table, please. Describe sales. So as you can see, I have these 5 attributes: customer ID, product ID, quantity bought, cost per unit, and I have the fifth attribute called as total cost, and total cost is virtually generated, that is, it is the derived attribute. Let me insert data into this, please.
I'll say insert into which table? Sales table. What value will I put? I'll put the values inside customer ID, product ID, quantity bought, cost per unit, values. Customer ID will say 789, product ID is 101, quantity bought is 2, cost per unit is 50.
Okay, so I have entered one value. Let me check if it is reflected. So I will do a select star from sales. Okay, so what I have seen, we can see that customer ID 789 has bought 101 product and quantity bought is 2, cost per unit is 50 and total cost over is 2 into 50, that is 100. What is the other way of doing it? If you don't want to store this value over here, total cost value over here, what you can do is you can just do a select. So my command is going to be
select. So maybe I will select customer ID, product ID, then I will say quantity bought, cost per unit. Then I can say what is that, quantity bought multiplied by cost per unit, and this I will say as this is what, derived total cost. Okay, from which table? From the sales table.
So I will get the same answer. Okay. So I am saying 789, 101, 250 and derived total cost is what? 2 into 50, that is 100. So there are two ways how you will formulate your derived attribute. Either do it inside your create table syntax or just do it inside your select statement. The third method, as I have told you, is by using triggers, which we'll do in the next video. So I hope you are clear with your derived attributes and how to define them in your create table or select statements. And I hope you will use them in your mini projects. Thank you.